Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @It'sJacinho. And today we're going to have the conversation. We kind of touch on it almost every single week, and that's why I feel like it probably deserves its own podcast or its own show, is the Pepe debate. Is it time to move on from Pepe? That's what we're going to be discussing today. And some of you might be like, why are we talking about this now? It's not even the middle of the season. Season just started. He ended the last season quite decently. Why are we talking about this now? The reason why we're talking about it now is because it's very, very relevant. It's very, very relevant to what's going on in the current time at Arsenal, because I think a lot of fans don't really think about contract situations when we start having discussions about players. And so I think we all can kind of conclude that he's not a player that you really dislike. He's a player that we know that is working really hard and can add something to the squad. But at 72 million and with 2 years left on his deal, and at 27 years old, what do we really expect from Nicola Pepe moving forward? Is there a fee that we could probably recoup for him that we could use a little bit better in the squad? Is he somebody that you think could possibly get better at this age? There's a lot of questions around this, and it's not agenda driven. It's not about beating down on Pepe. I just think we need to change how we talk about players and be able to have open discussions about them without making it into a you hate the player because you maybe potentially want to move him on. There's been players that have been at Arsenal over the last couple of years that I have liked, but would take a fee for them because I know it's time to move on. And so both things really can be true, right? That you like a player, but maybe it's just not time for, or maybe it's time to move on from them. And maybe you feel differently. Maybe you feel like there's a way that we can get the most out of him. Maybe you do feel like he can improve or that he is improving. So those are the things we're going to talk about today. And I do have a panel for today, and I'm going to go ahead and bring them in. I have Sulz here and George. Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hey. So yes, Mamadou, the squad is back -1. If you're wondering where Harry is, he's preoccupied. He's on holiday, so he's not wondering or worried or talking about Arsenal at the moment. He'll be back next Wednesday to get involved. But for the moment, it'll be the three of us, and we'll be tackling the Pepe conversation. But it's I don't know why people have such a hard time having this conversation about Pepe, because for me, I feel like it's completely valid. He's been at the club for 3 years or 3 seasons, or this will be his third season. He's, I think, failed to live up to the $72 million price tag, but I think we all kind of know that it shouldn't have been 72 million, and we shouldn't hold it around his neck and be like, okay, if you're worth 72 million, or if we bought you for 72 million, you need to be that. It's very rare that a player really lives up to their price tag, right? But ultimately, based on what we maybe expected, you can say definitively that maybe you're a little bit disappointed. At least that's kind of how I feel. But Souls, for you, when we signed Nicola Pepe and it was the price tag, you saw all the clips of him at Lille, you saw what kind of player we were getting, and you knew that we had opted to get him versus Zaha. How did you feel at that moment when we bought him? What were your true, honest feelings about Nicola Pepe the moment he became an Arsenal player?
I was 50-50. I've always got a reservation when you buy a player outside of any league. Even if you, for example, it was the other way around, whether he's going from the Premier League to League On, I'd have reservations because each league has their own challenges. As much as we don't rate other leagues in Europe, or we rate them, there is different challenges they're going to face. Obviously, the Premier League has a very set criteria that you've got to meet to be a good Premier League player, or for someone to adapt really quickly into a role. And it's similar to what, like, my thoughts are similar to what I think Sancho is going to go through. And it's one of those where they need space. Like, both players need space to really do what they're good at. And that was my reservation. I was like, can Pepe do what he's doing, but without the space? If he can, then yeah, he'd be a brilliant player for us. But it was one of those where I wasn't against it, but I wasn't for it either. I would have opted for Zaha to come in. just because I know what he offers and I know exactly what he's bringing. And I think the price tags were similar. The only difference was structured deal for Pepe, and Crystal Palace were demanding the fee to be in total upfront. And obviously, I think it was 60 to 70 million as well. So price tag doesn't really matter in this situation. It's just whether you want Zaha or Pepe for a direct thing. And I think it's just one of those. It's a weird one because his most successful season actually came as him playing in centre forward for half the season as well. So that's one of the things that we forget. Like, he scored a lot of his goals for Lille playing as a striker, like a shadow striker, cam kind of position. So he's playing a lot more centrally when he was playing for them, rather than on the sort of right hand side. I'm not saying he didn't play any part of the season there, but most of his games for that season came in the middle, and obviously majority of his games have been played on the right wing. But for me, it's now become the question of whether it's Saka or Pepe. And I think it's not me putting them two together or competing with each other. It's just Saka plays on the right, Pepe plays on the right. Who do I now prefer out of these two? But in terms of, was I excited? Of course I was. Like, he looked like a very good player, especially when he played against us in the Europa League. He did bits against us. So yeah, I was excited, but I would have liked to see Zaha personally, just because he's Premier. I know people are going to say, yeah, but his United move flopped. It was too soon, and we know why that happened, because of Moyes, the scandal with the Moyes and his daughter and all of that happened. That's part of the reason. But yeah, no, I would have preferred Zaha more. I said 70% Zaha, 30% Pepe.
Yeah, so really weird one, because I was very worried about Nicolas Pepe when we did come in, because I think anybody that properly watched him for Lille and how we were playing under Emery, you could start to see a little bit of similarity, because we played much more like basketball games and in transition. But for me, I felt Nicolas Pepe is not the type of player that Arsenal have historically bought if we're going to become a possession-based team. And when you have a Nicolas Pepe and you have an Aubameyang and you have these off-the-ball runners that require freedom to get the most out of them, they're very, very specific. And you have to make sure that you're buying them towards a system, that you're buying. And by the way, 72 million pounds screams that. You're buying him to be the project. And if you're not going to supplement that, that becomes a fault of the club, which is absolutely true. And I think when we talk about Nicolas Pepe in this debate, I have my feelings about how he's best, and I don't think we've done that. Now, second token, people living up to their price tag, it's a little bit of a two-way street here. Has he imposed himself to the similar degree that, is it all system? Is it only that is really what's hindering this boy? And if you changed a coach, you put him in maybe a different team with a similar setup, he explodes. That's where I start to lose with people, because I feel as though that when you buy a Nicolas Pepe, let's speak honestly here. We're talking about a transition player who's absolutely efficient in boxes, but requires chances to do that. And he needs freedom of movement. He can't be tasked with being a touchline winger, which in our system it is. And, he has to be playing on the inside closer to goal. And when you do that, you get somebody that's got excellent ball striking, a short backlift, which means he can score goals if you get him in good positions. But if you're asking him to play combination play with kind of inside, asking him to contribute in midfield, that's simply not his game. And when you talk about, his entire creativity, I think there's a lot of myths about what Nicolas Pepe does, because there's a lot of stats that go around and people shout, he's great in terms of expected goals and assists. But guys, I have just some hard-hitting truths about what Nicolas Pepe's stats in terms of his expected goals, which is just how he contributes to shot locations, and his expected assists. So if you start to look at it, Nicolas Pepe is among our top 5 in the squad in terms of chances created. And that stat gets kind of thrown around. He's actually the top, especially this season. But when you start to look into the stats, if you remove his set pieces, he drops down to kind of the 5th in the squad. And he really goes from contributing, at 35 minutes of a chance created down to 64. We look at Saka, who goes from 45 to 49. And within that stat, we really see the difference between the two. One is efficient at actions at times, but his overall play is not to the standard. And then when you dig a little bit further, and at Adam Vogue did a great piece in terms of looking how many shot creating actions are done by set pieces, crosses, indirect free kicks, and the like. And Nicolas Pepe, once again, along with Luke Shaw, Matt Ritchie, Pascal Gross, and Lucas Digne, kind of form the top 5 in the Premier League in which how many shot creating actions come from dead balls. And Pepe has almost 50%. He has 9 of his 20 current shot creating actions have come from set pieces. Now, some people might say that's a good thing, George. Like, we need dead ball specialists. I agree. But let's dig a little bit deeper. How many corners has Nicolas Pepe actually taken? He's again in the top 5 for the most corners taken. So is it a quality thing? Or is he taking enough shots or enough corners that those expected goals are being skewed by that? So I think these conversations need to happen with Nicolas Pepe. I think we need to be honest about what type of player is. I think we need to be kind of cognizant that we haven't fulfilled his potential. But at the same token, I think it's very fair to say he hasn't lived up to his end of the bargain equally. And there's pros and cons on both sides. And we can speak about them honestly without saying somebody is shit, without becoming I think, player debate. Because this is where I think the frustration happens. And I don't want to speak for others. It doesn't really bother me, but I feel like most people kind of on Twitter are annoyed by his fans more than the actual player. Like, when we discuss the actual players, there's qualities that we can all sympathize and actually really enjoy. But I feel as though that the fan evaluation of what his kind of career to date, at least at Arsenal, it's subpar. It is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And for me, just to back up, when I wasn't that ecstatic when he came in, not necessarily because of the player per se, but because I felt like we could have addressed other issues that for me were a lot more pressing at that moment. Central midfield has always been an issue, and we actually didn't address it at all. Center back, there were just other players that were being floated around as potential options for us to bring in that summer, and we chose a $72 million winger. And I thought to myself, this could blow up in our face if it doesn't work out. And I feel like at this point, when we're still kind of trying to get those key positions in, of course, we got Thomas Partey now, but let's be real, it's 2 years too late. We got a center backs in. It's probably a year or two too late. You bring in those players for that 72 million, and you maybe leave the Nicolas Pepe type signing until now, and I think you have a better result. But for me, it's about our priorities, not necessarily Nicolas Pepe, because I have to be honest, I didn't know much about him when he came in. I didn't know much about him. I did not sit there and say I knew. I just saw all these compilations, and I thought to myself, he looks like a decent player. But if you look at some of his performances in those, like that first game that he played, I think it was like against Burnley or something. It was like one of them first games. I think Danny Ceballos, it was like one of his first games too, or something like that too. And he looked like a player that could do some damage. But the interesting thing about Pepe for me is that I think he's been misprofiled, like you said, George. I think people saw the compilations of him doing those tricky skills, but as we've gotten to know him over the last 3 years, I would say he's more of a finisher than a 1v1 kind of dribbler, and he suffers from not being able to beat the man. And that's one of the misconceptions about him. He needs to be close into the box. He's more of a finisher. And so bringing in somebody who I feel like maybe the club and we have misprofiled just feels weird. But let's talk about what if some of his other strengths are. And Nicolas Pepe is not a bad player. And that's what I kind of want to start off with a little bit. It's like, we don't think he's a bad player. He just has some key flaws that make him a little bit less useful for us in this system. But George, for you, if you had to pinpoint, like, what is Nicolas Pepe good at? What would you say that is?
Okay, so I think part of the issue is, again, that we misprofile him in terms of a winger. You have to give Nicolas Pepe freedom. He's an inside forward. He is somebody that you basically structure the attack around to finish your attack. He isn't somebody that's going to start, assist, and build up. He cannot be a touchline winger. He is not able to kind of exist on his own because he can't go in to out. In terms of Nicolas Pepe's movement itself, it's very one-directional in terms of out to in. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. We've seen tons of players that have constantly been able to do that. But the issue is I feel as though Nicolas Pepe is best with a false nine that's dropping deep and an opposite winger that's maybe a wing forward as well. And what he needs is an overlapping option, whether that be from midfield or whether that be from a fullback. He requires an option because he himself cannot go into out. He's incapable of doing that. And so in order to thrive, he needs somebody to give him that option in order to free up his movement and his angles. Because really the defender and really the goalkeeper know kind of where he's going to go at this point. He's not able to go into out and whip in across. That's not his game. And so when you look at it, he becomes very easy to defend against and really easy to isolate. And you know what? We've seen that in those purchases. But he needs to live off last defenders, Jess. He cannot be, in my opinion, not part of a possession-based team, one that wants to dominate kind of at the halfway line. That's not Nicolas Pepe. In fact, he's really much more in the mold of a really like a Marcus Rashford, not to the same quality, but that's the type of profile that you look for Nicolas Pepe to really be, a maximum efficiency player. And, at Lille, he showed shoots of it. But I mean, at the same token, you're looking at somebody to finish your final action, not to contribute to build up. And that really is it. And you're kind of looking at maybe giving him the freedom that a Mo Salah gets, at Liverpool. But fundamentally, Mo Salah has a different level of creativity. We're talking about different tool traits with a Mo Salah or even a Marcus Rashford that, Nicolas Pepe doesn't consistently do. These kind of football actions in terms of his movement, they're inconsistent. When he decides to go for goal, when he decides to come deep, his first touch, like these very basic decisions kind of aren't consistently done. And it really makes it difficult to support somebody like that when you've got another low touch player in Aubameyang in your front line. And so when you look at kind of instances where it has worked out, i.e. a Marcus Rashford or in other big teams that employ these kind of wing forwards, you have tons of midfield, you have tons of false nines, you have a 3. We just don't play like that. So for me, his profile really simply is a wing forward that is limited in terms of going out to in. That's really his movement. He can't go into out, but he is somebody with high efficiency, great ball striking, and really a short backlift, which just means he can get his shots off really quickly. And so you do look at him as an intelligent finisher. I actually wouldn't say he's efficient, and that's really where the distinction has to come in, because I don't think he's efficient. When he is given 1v1s, he simply doesn't produce. That's part of the frustration, but he's an intelligent finisher. He can, when focused, finished in areas that we don't have with Bukayo Saka and really many others in the squad in terms of his variety of finishing. But efficiency, that's a very different topic from his tools, but he does have it.
Yeah, for sure. Sulz, what do you see, like, if there's one thing about Nicolas Pepe that frustrates you the most, what would that be? Like, for me in particular, I get that if he's 1v3, he's not going to be able to beat people. But for me, it's when he gets into the box and he's trying to go up one-on-one. Like we saw this with Brendan Williams, against Norwich. He beat him several times. And then once he had already beat him, he slowed up and allowed Brendan Williams to come back into play so that he could make the slide tackle. That frustrates me because he already did the hard work. And I just feel like if he would just use his right foot a little bit more, he would get more end product from his hard work. What do you think? What frustrates you the most about Pepe?
It's his footballing IQ. I think I kind of can't blame him because I know obviously he was a goalkeeper in the academy, so you're going to get taught a bit differently to read the game. And obviously you've not got the practice of reading a game sort of as an attacking player. Obviously in those situations, things happen a lot quicker. And you can clearly see he was not a winger in the academy, just with how slow his mind works in terms of a footballing sense. The minute he starts to get pressed, for me, I always say he's 3 seconds behind the game. He doesn't really know what he wants to do when he gets the ball, which is why there's so many players who are better. And this is why when I talk about Premier League, some of the better players in the Premier League, one of the things that you're going to see is they know what they're going to do before they get the ball. And that's what makes them so good. It's like when you look at even Marcus Rashford, for example, majority of the times, you'll already know where he's going to end up before he's got the ball. Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, KDB, even Bukayo Saka. Let's talk about Arsenal. Like ESR knows what he's going to do. Odegaard, majority of the time he's been here, he knows what he's going to do before he gets the ball. Whereas with Pepe, I think once he gets the ball, he thinks about what he wants to do. And that makes him so predictable because like you mentioned, he beats Brandon Williams, but then doesn't really know what to do at that point. He's having to think about it, hence why he slows down. He's trying to slow the game down so he's able to get and understand the picture, whereas with a lot of other players already know the picture before they've done it. And that's what frustrates me because he's got everything to be a good player, but I don't think he's got the intelligence to be really sort of efficient when he gets that, because he beats the player. Like you said, Brandon Williams is a good 1v1 defender. He's not a terrible, of course he's young, so he's still learning and developing, but he's not a terrible, like we've seen him, he's been very, very efficient with 1v1 defending in the past when he was at Man United, obviously on loan now to Norwich, and he beat him with ease, but then just like I said, he's 3 seconds behind. He beat him and he goes, shit, what shall I actually do? And like you said, another thing is obviously not being able to use the right foot again, because he wasn't needing to as a goalkeeper. You're not really needing to use your weaker foot. It'd be nice if you used it, but it's not something that they're going to drill into you. Obviously, as an attacking player or an outfield player, they do kind of drill it into you to use your weaker foot. Some people develop it. Some people kind of are just never get it. They never can use their weak foot, or it's not as good. But I think they're the two things that kind of frustrate me. It's just his decision making at times could be way better. And honestly, I think if he got that, if he developed that at Arsenal, I probably would have viewed him differently. But it's just there's so many opportunities he gets. Like, George mentioned, he's he's an intelligent finisher, or he's someone who finishes your moves. And when people start moves, that's where the intelligence comes in. That's why these creative players, like your Mesut Ozil, for example, the reason they're so good at what they do is because of their intelligence, but they have the ability to back it up. Pepe has the ability, but not the intelligence, and that's what annoys me. But that's the one thing I hoped he got, but it hasn't happened for him.
With Sulz, I think, sorry to butt in, Jess, because, part of the problem is I'm seeing comments that he could perform the role like at Sterling or, at City, and then I'm seeing, could he perform at Liverpool? But guys, like, this is, again, you're misprofiling what kind of player you're getting there. He is not an outlet. He can't perform it because Sterling is able to go in and out or out to in, both sides. He's able to operate on the touch line and still be efficient. Sterling is the epitome of efficiency and able to kind of dominate a wing being an outlet. That is not Pepe. Pepe is an inside forward that needs options running around him and space to run into. That is what he needs. That is not Sterling. Sterling is a close kind of control player who can operate in tight spaces. Mo Salah, same thing. Mane, same thing. These are not the same players. Nicolas Pepe cannot operate in tight spaces in the same way. And that is exactly why he won't ever reach the level that we need, because we need a player that can do both. And look, is it his fault that the club spent £72 million on an incomplete player? No. But can we speak honestly about really where we see this potential? Because I'm sure we'll get to it, but the idea of making a decision has to happen. And whether you attribute that fault to Arteta, which I push back on, because, when you look at wingers in terms of Bukayo Saka's involvement, Martinelli's improvement, Igasar's improvement on the wing, especially their tempo control, it is very consistent with the claims that, he helped Sané and Sterling, which, by the way, weren't made by other people. They were made by the players themselves. So I doubt that they're lying. But when you come to that point, we need to start making a decision as a football club. Otherwise, we continue to depreciate an asset that is already going lower and lower. And we have our best player who plays in that position already. I say it so many times on this channel. Why are we making excuses for a depreciating asset that's been inconsistent, who, by the way, is 26, guys, not 22 with room to grow, 26, for a 20-year-old player who could be the star and project of this club, and not could be, already is. Bukayo Saka is our man. He is the Michael Jordan of our team. The guy gets double-teamed every single game, and it's just, I'm kind of tired for making excuses for a player that should have adapted by now. It's his 2 seasons. He's in his 3rd season, guys. Like, I don't know what else to say on him. Like, we
just
know
to
what
add,
player
George, on that as well. At 26, you know what? There's certain things you can let go of as well in terms of development. You could be like, all right, they may just get it, or it may click for them. But the deficiencies that, for me anyways, the deficiencies that Pepe has are not things that you can learn at this age. You either have it or you don't, or you develop it as you're learning. But I think those habits have been instilled into him, and he is just this player. And it's going to be very difficult, because for me, intelligence doesn't just click for you. It's something that you've got to have, the natural instinct to play a pass rather than make a shot happen. I think for me, that's the case. But obviously for other people, it might be different.
But why does Mikel Arteta prefer technical security? Like, I'm seeing these questions, but guys, let's tease this out. Why? What are the big teams doing in the league right now? They are positional coaches. What is the idea of technical security in a front line? It's in order to sustain attacking patterns. Just how many times do we talk about our attack and the struggles that we've had this season? And it's like, in order to do that, you need to sustain attacks. How do you do that? You do that with technical security. And so you cannot do it with two players in the front line that demand freedom, that are low touch players, by the way. So you need to make a decision for it. And then you move from there. And if we're not going to be a team that supports wing forwards, that has a back, midfield that's going to overlap for him, and you're not going to do that for him, I'm sorry, it's time to sell. And it's not Mikel Arteta, because, by the way, Klopp, Tuchel, all the big coaches are doing positional play with technical security. So this claim that, would he work in another system? That's false. But are other coaches doing the same thing? Well, they are. All the biggest coaches are doing positional play that focus on technical security. It's not like they're choosing a different winger and we're the only ones doing this. So I don't know. I'm clearly very visibly frustrated.
The one thing that I will say is that, it's not that I feel like he needs to be able to beat his man every single time. I think that's the misconception here, is that I'm seeing like, okay, Mahrez doesn't beat his man all the time, so-and-so doesn't beat his man all the time. And that's not really the argument that I'm making. I'm just saying that when we get into key positions where his decision-making is the difference between potentially a goal or not, he has to make the right decisions at least once in a game. And sometimes he lacks that. And every player has those moments, but I tend to feel like Pepe has more of those moments than other players. He has more of those moments where he beats his man. And then I think it personally doesn't come from just wanting to switch back onto his left foot. Sometimes I think it's because of what he's used to doing and he did this at Lille. Beat the man, let him catch up, beat him again, let him catch up, beat him again, let him catch up. Very similar to how he played against Olympiacos. Exactly. I think it's more that being embedded in who he is as a player, not just wanting to get back onto his left foot. But the reality is that the game is won on fine margins. And the difference between us having 2 or 3 goals, I think, in that game was Pepe slowing up and allowing Brendan Williams to get back into his spot. So yes, it seems like we're nitpicking, but you can't really compare him to Mahrez or Rafinha or these types of guys, because they're at the higher end of the spectrum of elite wingers in the Premier League. Maybe you can compare him to Traore or Alan Saint-Maximin, but look at who they play for. Are we really going to say because he's similar to Saint-Maximin and similar to Traore that's good enough for Arsenal Football Club? Like, you know what I'm saying? They don't have end product, but it's not okay for Pepe not to have it. And I don't remember them spending 72 million on those 2 players. So that's just kind of where I sit with that. But I want to talk about the numbers aspect of it, because there's always numbers kind of thrown out there about how he scores a lot of goals. And he does, in comparison to some of our other wing forwards and players playing in those attacking positions. He does score quite a bit of goals. Since he's been at Arsenal altogether in all competitions, he's scored 25 goals and has gotten 17 assists. And I mean, he has 95 appearances. So, I mean, I would say that that's not amazing, but I know appearances can also be like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. So I want to give him a little bit of that. His best season in terms of Premier League, what he was giving to us was, last season, 10 goals and 1 assist, which isn't bad. In the Europa League, 6 goals, 4 assists. So it kind of seemed like he was getting his groove together. He had some things going on. I mean, what do you guys make of those numbers? Do you think that that's the kind of return that you kind of want from a player that's kind of in and out of the side? I mean, I think that those are decent numbers for somebody who doesn't play all the time. But do you guys feel a little bit differently than that? Do you think we should have gotten more? Because 25 goals and 17 assists, I think is not super bad, for somebody who's in and out of the side.
Well, it depends on really what you're judging that off of. I mean, if Pepe was a 40 million pound signing with room and potential to grow, a 22, 23-year-old burgeoning talent that we know is incomplete, and receiving those numbers, you'd be ecstatic. If you're looking at him in terms of a bench player, which, by the way, like I think Pepe is very effective when the game is stretched. And in fact, we do see that. And a lot of his goals, they haven't necessarily come from 90-minute starts. A lot of those have really come with some appearances, and particularly in the Europa League. So when you're looking at goals and quality of opposition, particularly when you start to cite those 10 goals or 11 goal and assists numbers that he had last season, how many of that was in a run where we weren't really competing for things? How much of that was against lowered opposition? And to be fair, I mean, Saka, you have to levy that same concern in terms of output there. But the difference between the two is one is offering us more other than just goal and assist output. And, that, again, is really the sacrifice you're making between Pepe and Oba. I think people confuse it's not a Pepe and Saka debate, because it really is not. It's a Pepe and Oba debate. And it's really coming to the point of, are you willing to sacrifice the inconsistencies in Pepe's game in order to support him or not? And if you're not going to do that, calm, that's fine. But really, it's getting to the point where we as a club are moving in a different direction. It's very clear that positional play is not just an Arsenal thing. It's really a world thing. And if Pepe doesn't fit into that structure, I don't think he ever will. We're never going to be somebody that give him space to go on transitions. We want to dominate the ball. I mean, everything that I look at online is people saying we don't dominate the ball. We don't have possession. Guys, if you want to become a possession-based team, you're not going to facilitate Nicolas Pepe. That's simply not where he's best. And so I struggle to understand where his future is, not just right now, but where do we fit him in the future in this Arsenal team? And that is annoying, because we have a 72 million pound asset that is depreciating with every going week. And it's not good for him, period. I think he explodes. I've long said that Nicolas Pepe is a very, very good player, and he's likely to explode outside the Premier League, probably in the Bundesliga or in La Liga, where he's given a chance to stretch his legs, run, and become just a finisher. And the team is built around him, and he becomes really that tip of an arrow, and he is their focus. He is their Oba. That is when he would explode. In this Arsenal team, I don't ever see him achieving that. And I also don't see us playing a system that would allow him to do it. So I would rather reinvest.
Yeah, let's kind of talk about that a little bit. And I just want to go back, because people are like, where are you getting the St. Maximum and Traore? Because somebody in the comments said, well, Traore doesn't have end product, and neither does St. Maximum. So why do we expect Pepe to beat his man every single time and all of that? And I don't think we should be comparing our $72 million asset to players that they're not really the same, and they're not the same level that we would expect at Arsenal. So it's just that. But so we're talking about the system and it doesn't fit him, but there was a run of games where a lot of Arsenal fans felt like they saw the best from Pepe. And that was in the FA Cup run when we played that 3-4-3. And he was quite good against City and Chelsea. Very small sample size here, but the front line of Lacazette and Aubameyang and Pepe really worked in that time frame. Xhaka and Ceballos kind of played in behind them, and he was really good off of the break. I thought he was very, very good against Chelsea. They couldn't handle him. They couldn't live with him. He had that one goal that was called offsides because Ainsley Maitland-Niles was out of position. A lot of people go back to that and cite that as a time, not only that we were more interesting and a better team and all of that, and why did we switch from that system to the other, but it seemed like we were getting the most out of Aubameyang and Pepe in particular. But we're not playing like that now. As soon as we played against Fulham, we could already kind of see that in that next season, we were going to transition out. Is Arteta at fault for not sticking with a system that for some people got the most out of two of our better goal scorers? You know what I mean? Because now Aubameyang and Pepe are looking like two players that maybe lack goals, but they didn't look like that in that FA Cup run. You know what I mean? A lot of people go back to that FA Cup run as like a bookmark of a situation where things were going right and we went away from it, and that's Arteta's fault.
No, I think, the FA Cup run suited them because they are, sort of facing the goal and running in behind. And that's exactly what we did. We absorbed pressure and we hit them on the counter with both City and Chelsea. That's the way we played. We absorbed. But what happened? This is where people keep, and this is the frustration I have when people are like, oh, why did he change the system? Did you forget we lost like how many games in a row? Like, people, this is the problem with the fan base. They forget because it suits their narrative to forget what happened. The reason he had to change the 3-4-3 was because he was figured out, not because he wanted to do it. Like, I mean, maybe he did want to do it as well, but he was figured out. There was like, what was it, 2 months or something like that, where we just didn't win a game after the United game? What do you want him to do? Just, because Pepe's playing good, yeah, wicked, let's keep fucking losing. No, you change the system. And if you can't get on board, you fuck off. And it's as simple as that. For me, look, the 4-2-3-1 is the way forward, or the 4-3-3. Obviously, we don't really have a stagnant formation when we play in-game. It's just how we start off. And then obviously everything switches in-game. But my problem is, look, it had to be done because there was a lack of creativity, there was a lack of technical security, and also there was a lack of it was too predictable. They're like, all right, what's Arsenal going to do? 3-4-3, absorb pressure, right? How do we break that? Done. And every team was beating us. Lesser quality teams were beating us. Obviously, the better quality teams were beating us. And there was nothing that was working. He switched it to a 4-2-3-1. And guess what? We've had one of the best runs. Not runs as in we've won every single game in a row, but in terms of a consistent run of games where we've been good, where we've been creating chances. Yes, it's not been perfect, but it's been a lot better in terms of getting those results out of them. Yes, Pepe suffered because we're no longer... Because the thing is, no team gives us space because they know the minute they give us space, what happens? They're getting ripped because we've got Pepe and Aubameyang. Because look at Leeds, look at Newcastle. They gave us space. What happened? They were one of our highest scoring games. We scored 4 against both of them. Why? Because they played high lines. What happened? Aubameyang got in behind. Pepe got in behind. And that's the difference. People are not going to do that. So what you then need is technical security in your attacking third to be able to do that. Or you need the striker to be able to draw players out, to give space to your wingers. That's what Lacazette does. Hence why I keep saying to people, it's not a matter of the system being wrong. It's a matter of who's at that striker position or who's that centre focal point of our strike force. If you're going to have Aubameyang, he's not drawing players. But guess who draws players? Bukayo Saka. That gives Aubameyang the space to do what he does. Then obviously on the left-hand side, you end up with ESR, Pepe or Martinelli. ESR right now is a threat to the attack. So what happens? Bukayo Saka's drawing players, ESR's drawing players. Guess what that leaves Aubameyang with? Just to deal with a centre-back or maybe 2 centre-backs, but it gives him less to deal with, but more for the wingers to deal with. What happens when Lacazette plays? Lacazette drops in deep. What that then does, it kind of makes their defence go out of shape because they're now having to deal with more midfield, in the area of the midfield being more sort of congested. That gives the space to the wingers to go in behind because they're now drawing players in. That's what's happening. Aubameyang doesn't draw players because what they do is they cut off the space. That's the difference. And the problem is, I just find it funny because this is where I say fans are fans for a reason and coaches are coaches for a reason. They're never going to look at it from a tactical standpoint. They're always going to look at it from a standpoint of, well, my player ain't performing because this manager isn't playing to the strength. No, he changes the striker. I'm not even joking, same system, put Lacazette in, Pepe performs. That's the difference.
Yeah, well, that's why we always just really, really quick, George. I just wanted to say that, because I wanted to back up Sulz's point. Well, I think we all for me, I kind of feel like Pepe, Lacazette, and ESR works together, but then Aubameyang's kind of like the odd man out. It's like you got to get the pieces right. And then so when people are saying, well, why aren't we shitting on Aubameyang? He's the one, he's doing the same thing as Pepe. So why aren't we looking at him? Because Aubameyang's going to run his deal down at Arsenal. There's no decision to be made on Aubameyang. Aubameyang has also been our best striker before this last season, for the past 2.5 seasons. So he has enough clout and enough credit in the bank for people not to have to really question him because he was the top striker in the league for 2.5 seasons. Pepe has done nothing of the sort. So you have to look at the $72 million asset that needs a decision made over Aubameyang because we all kind of know the score there. But Arteta did say in the Europa League, a lot of people were pissed off about this as well, was that we were in the Europa League and I think we were playing against Benfica. And he made the point to say that he didn't play Pepe because there wasn't going to be any space in behind. And we watched that. Benfica played in 2 banks of 4, and we had a very hard time breaking them down with Odegaard, ESR, Aubameyang, and Bukayo Saka. Sometimes you just have to kind of play the players that are actually going to get you the results. And if there's no space to run in behind, it is going to be difficult to find a space for Pepe.
But Jess, I thought that the Arsenal fan base have short-term memory loss. I thought when we had Emery, who got the most out of his attackers. People were complaining that we didn't dominate enough games, that we had no control, and that as a team, we needed to become more possession-based, moved up the pitch, and sustain pressure. I thought that was all the criticisms of an Unai Emery, that he was too much of an underdog. Wasn't that what everybody was saying when you did cater to your attackers? That we weren't a big enough team, that we needed to dominate and become more possession-based? I thought that was really the critique of an Unai Emery, who, by the way, was your coach that catered to the players and gave him more output, whether that was Aubameyang, whether that was Pepe. So I thought we've already done this experiment. We've already seen what people like or what they don't like. And then when you talk about the 3-4-3 Sulz, you're absolutely spot on. But we all knew the limitations of a 3-4-3. In fact, every manager does. There is no precedent in the Premier League in the last 20 years where a 3-4-3 has lasted longer than 18 months. The longest has been Antonio Conte, which, by the way, lasted 12 months, and he had to change, and he was fired afterwards. So in terms of an actual success of a system, it was not going to last. And you know what? The idea that we were found out was true. I don't know why people are whitewashing that first part of the season. We were absolutely losing games because people were figuring us out. They were clamping down the Ainsley Maitland-Niles kind of channel, and they blocked that left-hand side, and we had no answers. Why? Because, by the way, Pepe and people that we tried on the right wing couldn't play as a touchline winger. They could not do the Sterling role that people keep trying to put on Pepe. Like, that's not him. It's a misprofile. And, I'm getting kind of tired of us whitewashing certain aspects, but then looking where fundamentally Arsenal fans want us to dominate again. That's what I hear from everything. We need to up our possession. Even in Arteta, let's remove the manager. People from Arsenal want us to dominate possession. They want us to go higher up the pitch, become a halfway line team, and they want us to dominate not just big games, but small games as well. And they want to do that at the halfway line. They didn't want to do it in a deep block, because when we saw it with Emery, people were saying these are underdogs. This isn't a big team. We're playing like a smaller team. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want a player that is a transition forward with big space, calm, but then understand that you're going to be a low block team that springs on counters. Be comfortable with that. And if you are, then great. I disagree. I don't think any of the big teams, I would argue, name me another big team that's doing that right now. The only one that comes to head is Manchester United. And we all know how consistent they are and how great they've been in terms of trophies in the last 5 years. So, I think right now what we are doing is we are making excuses for our subjective preference for what you like to see in a player. That's what I see with the Pepe debate. You like that wing forward that, is kind of talent. That is really somebody that will lose possession, but it'll get you off the seat. That's what you pay for. Yeah. That's what you like to see. He
does do it right. It looks good, and it erases all the things that he did before that. There's a lot of people like that, and that makes it. I get that part, because when somebody does something good, you kind of forget about the times that he just kind of lost the ball needlessly and did this and that. And I do want to say this, that I think Pepe has tried really hard to be better in the system. I have seen improvements in Pepe in terms of his work rate off the ball and him trying to be better in build-up. Is it good enough? That's a question that, only you can answer for yourself. But I think he has tried. But just kind of playing devil's advocate, I know this is something that Yo-Yo has brought up several times, about system or player. When all of our attacking players are underperforming, how can we just blame Pepe and not look at the system? Because it's not just Pepe in some people's minds that are underperforming in terms of attacking output. Look at Bukayo Saka. Maybe he's not scoring as many goals. Aubameyang not scoring as many goals. And so can we actually look at Arteta's system and trust it and be like, okay, well, he's the outcast in Arteta's system, or is Arteta's issue a bigger problem? Just playing devil's advocate, because that has been a question asked several times, and I can't really answer it myself because
can I say on that, because I've got an answer, but I've got a theory behind it. For me, my biggest critique for this whole team has been the finishing or the end product of this team, because we are getting into spaces where we should be scoring more goals. We've got a decent XG, but it's just when we get into those one-on-one opportunities, a lot of the times we're missing them. Whether that's a confidence thing, I don't really blame the system, because I'm seeing chances being created. I'm going to go back to it. Norwich, we had 30 shots and we scored 1 goal. Think about it. We created 30 shooting opportunities and we only... All right, let's cut that right down to 10 shots. You're telling me we didn't create 10 good shots where we should have got at least another goal? That becomes a finishing problem. For me, that's a player issue, not a coaching issue. The coach can only get you there. After that, it's up to you what you do. If you want to sky it, you sky it. That's up to you what you do. But if you want to finish it and score the goal, that's all the manager can do, is set the team up to win a game. If you go out there and don't perform, that's not on the manager. That's on you as an individual. If you get a one-on-one opportunity and you miss it, what's Arteta meant to do? Go grab that ball and put it in the back of the net himself? No, he's relying on you because he believes you've got the ability to score that goal. And that's what it comes down to. It's like, for example, the West Ham, Bruno Fernandes was given the responsibility to take that penalty last minute. What happened? He missed. You can't then go, oh, that's Ole's fault. Why did Bruno miss a penalty? That's all Ole's fault. No. It's not like he substituted him on last minute and cold feet and all of that. No, and that's what frustrates me when people say that, because for me, I look at chance creation at that point and go, okay, are we creating chances? We kind of are. Yes, maybe Aubameyang isn't getting all of them. Maybe the wrong player is getting the chances that we're creating. But the point is, chances are being created. We're just not taking them.
I think whatever stats that you look at, Jess, like we had a special look, and in terms of these worrying stats, the one thing that you cannot say is that Arsenal do not consistently get in good positions. That every single statistic has said that, and particularly when we've had our starting 11, that is the point. In fact, I don't believe that there's a Premier League appearance where Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka that have played 90 minutes and we've lost. Not even I don't believe, I know for a fact. Go back, look at the stats. When both of those two have played 90 minutes, we have not lost. Now, is that George saying that we're never going to lose when those two start? No. But it does show the quality difference in a squad that is so poor in quality. When you're talking about, can we do these things? Is it the system or is it the players? Well, a system should not be able to produce the amount of chances that we do and the shot locations that we do if it's poor. Because I'll tell you another team who doesn't do it, Manchester United, but their overperformance of XG is immense. Let's look at Paul Pogba. Just simple facts. He's overperforming his expected assists by 5. Do you guys know how ridiculous that is? 5 overperformance. He's got 7 assists, and 5 of those he shouldn't have done. That's what those stats mean. So when you're talking about, is it a system or not, how many of our players are overperforming their XG? That would be a worrying sign in statistic terms that the system is not good. Why do I mean that? Because if you are overperforming your XG, that means as a player, you are overperforming the actions. You're not expected to score, but you do anyway. And awesome. That's because you're a great player. But that doesn't mean then that the system's working. I would then worry when we go back to Unai Emery, what was the consistent criticism, by the way, guys, of those underlying statistics? We weren't creating chances. There was overperformance by our top strikers, and we didn't have consistent play in the final third or entries into the box. Let's look at Arsenal since Norwich, and let's see about those statistics. Do we have very good entries into the box? Yeah, it's among the best. Do we create chances? Yeah, we do. Again, it's among the best. Do we finish those chances? No. So then you got to be, that's why I give rope to the system. And it removes the Arteta debate. It removes whoever the manager is, because we've seen Unai Emery, the complete opposite. That's why I really don't like, I don't like looking at the manager. Just look at systems, look at some of the numbers, and are we competing? Because we have examples of the system not doing well, but overperforming. We have examples of the system doing well and underperforming. And I think that's a very specific difference that we have to look at when we're looking at the attack. For example, Arsenal players have scored more on international break now than they did in the Prem all season. So if you're looking at, changes, maybe this is people getting informed. Maybe it's that. But fundamentally, I feel as though that you need to make sure that the system isn't creating. If we're not getting the ball in the final third, then I'd worry. That's what I would worry about. Then I would be on board. Arteta's system is not it. I hear you. But then I would only push back. Can you name me another Big Six team, bar United, that do not attack with 5 channels, that do not have possession play, that do not do that and are transition teams in the Unai Emery mold?
The one thing I will say about it, and this is I did a stream the other day, is that I just feel like with all of this, it's because of the Pepe looks like the type of player that probably would have been good under Wenger. He's a free type of player. My thing with the system, it's positional and all of that. I think it's similar to a lot of other big team systems in the way that they play, but they're able to take more risks because they have better quality. I think they're able to allow their front players to be a little bit more take
Free.
that risk, more free, exactly, because they know that the quality that they have behind them, to the side, to the right, to the left, is a lot better. And because maybe Arteta doesn't trust it, or maybe they don't trust each other, they tend not to take those risks. And I don't think that that's a reason to include somebody who's a little bit more free in the system, thinking you're going to get that freedom, because the system dictates everything. If he goes out there and he's more free, he doesn't play, because he has to play within the system. But the reason why you can't really talk about Arteta in this is because I sense this. I feel like I sense this little thing about, well, we should keep him because Arteta may not be here, and under another manager he'll be great, right? He wasn't great under Unai Emery either, you guys. Like, there was another manager here, and he wasn't amazing under him. So I don't think he needs to outlast Arteta and then all of a sudden he's going to explode. I don't really think it's that. And to be quite honest, unless Arteta finishes in the bottom half of the table, I don't think he's going anywhere. And that's why it's important to have this conversation, because there needs to be a decision made on Pepe from now into the end of the season. Arteta will probably be here unless he bombs. The players are behind him, so most of the times when the manager bombs, it's because the players down tools. This group is not going to down tools on him. He's probably going to be here unless something catastrophic happens. So the idea that Pepe just has to outlast Arteta, I think doesn't make sense, because a decision needs to be made this summer. And that's, I feel like, the bigger part of the conversation is, how do we feel about Pepe? We've kind of talked about his strengths, his weaknesses, how he felt when he first came in. Some people are saying he needs more time. He's had 3 seasons. He's had 3 seasons under 2 different managers. So I think we have a good idea of kind of, even if he hasn't, maybe there's another 5% that he could do a little bit better if something else happened. Ultimately, for 72 million, he hasn't given us what we needed. And I don't think we can say definitively that we feel like another manager makes him into that signing. I don't think that happens. So now we're in a position where, do we apply sunk cost fallacy, where it's like, well, we paid so much, so we have to keep on to him? I don't think that's smart. Who would buy him? There's 50 million going around in the chat box, 30 million. I think we'd be lucky to get 30, if I'm really honest, based on what's going on. And should we extend? Should he get a new deal or an extension? Because we don't feel like we could sell him.
That's Roma 2019, Jess. That is Roma 2019 with Lacazette. We have been here in the last summer recognizing that we've made poor decisions on an asset that hasn't worked. It is time to move on, unless you see Nicolas Pepe turning it around and being the mainstay in your project that, by the way, is worth chucking Bukayo Saka out of his best position. Unless you believe those words, then the option is to sell. And it's better for him and it's better for us. You sell that asset at appreciated value. Sure, we may have bought 72, which we all know he wasn't worth that, but that was the value. And maybe we sell for 30. Okay, let's use that as an example. You want to sell for 25? I really don't care. Fundamentally, it's about maximizing your squad, and we need to learn when to let go. We do this as fans, and this is the one thing, Jess, I agree with you on 100% that we don't do enough of. We're not ruthless in our decision making. I saw a quote with Giroud that it's kind of upset a lot of people, and the quotes did. But one of the things that I thought that was really interesting was, at Chelsea, if you underperform, you get sold. At Arsenal, you have an ability to play out of form. And for me, that's been the crux of really moving forward. We end up keeping these players that we know aren't good enough, that we know don't fit, and we should have moved on a lot sooner than we did. But we do it on the hope that they could turn around, the hope that they have the potential to really do it. There's something really, really good about them, but maybe it'll work in the future. Guys, to date, we just haven't seen it. And when you reach a point, for me, I'm sorry, when you're 26, you're in your prime. I've seen you for 3 seasons. This isn't a new player. This isn't a young player with room to grow. By the time you're 26, you are the player that you're going to be. You have the potential to maybe improve certain things, but you're not going to tell me something that I don't know. particularly somebody that I've seen grow from the age of 23 to 24 up until 26, 27. And so for me, that is the question. And so if you've decided that you're not going to do that, you're not going to sacrifice your best player and your young franchise in Saka, then just sell. Use those funds to go and really buy a left winger, support the system even more. That makes sense if you're not going to do it.
I mean, do you think Pepe wants, like, if I'm Pepe, besides, if I feel as though I'm going to be sharing time and probably behind Emile Smith-Rowe and Bukayo Saka, who are both 20 years old, who are, I think there's nothing wrong with this, but all managers have favorites. And I would think that Bukayo Saka and ESR are probably favorites. At 27 years old, 26, 27 years old, if I'm offered a contract, do I sign it? Like, do you know what I mean? Do I even sign it? Because I need playing time in my prime. You know, I don't want to be sitting on the bench. Maybe he does. Maybe he's okay with it. But Sulz, for you, like, what do you think the future holds for Nicola Pepe? Like, if you could make a prediction, do you think, because I haven't heard anything about an extension. I haven't heard anything of the sort. We've kind of heard that Arteta likes him and, you know, they're just, you know, kind of, it's just very vague around him, really. Do you think we'll try to look for somebody to buy him? I mean, it's going to be difficult because the other leagues are broke.
Yeah, I think people might want to turn their headsets off with what I'm about to say, because I'm about to praise the board, which I rarely do. But one thing I've realized with the Cronkies taking 100% ownership is when things hit the fan, they're willing to make a decision. When I mentioned this on previous streams, what I've meant by it is when Raul, let's go back to the first decision. Obviously, Gazidis went, blah, blah, blah. The first major decision that they made that went against the entire fan base was Sven Mislintat. Why did they get rid of him? Because he didn't buy into the project, or they didn't buy into what the Cronkies or whoever's making the decision in terms of a footballing sense. He didn't buy into that. So they got rid. Raul Sanelli, we know what happened there. Did dodgy dealings. Josh came in straight away, got an investigation done, gone. The thing is, what I'm now starting to see at the club, as much as I hate to say this, they are becoming ruthless. They are taking the mold of, you know what, we bite the bullet. And that's what they've been doing. Think about it. They've terminated, was it 5 contracts, 6 contracts? And they paid good money to terminate them. It's not like they paid £1 million or they paid like 500k or they paid like the last remaining month or something like that. No, they paid millions of pounds to terminate these contracts because they were either being a problem at the club or they no longer had any use to be in the club. So the thing is, when it comes to Nicola Pepe, why aren't we hearing this? Because if they were going to do it, they would have re-signed him by now, because they've said no contract is going under 2 seasons. So that indicates to me there's either going to be one of 2 things happening this summer. Either he's sold, which is more than likely going to happen, or we re-sign him. But for that to happen, he's got to have an exceptional season. I'm talking 15, 16, 17 goals, wiping the top goal scorer for Arsenal, like, this season. I'm talking substantially. He's got to outperform Saka in every sense of the imagination. He's got to become the favourite for Arteta. Basically, he's got to give Arteta 0 reasons to not play him. And I don't think he's going to do that because he's not done it yet. Why is that going to happen? And for me, he's going to get sold.
See, for me, and this is the issue, is that now I'm seeing that people are like, well, why are we focusing on the price tag? He can be a decent squad player and da 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 da. The issue with that way of thought is that you're not thinking about who he's impacting by being involved in the squad. We don't think past the fact that it's just okay to have a player like that. We're not saying he's bad, but you know who he takes playing time away from? Martinelli. Don't you guys want Martinelli to play?
It's not. Even in the decision making, I don't think it's the Martinelli thing. For me, it's more, what can he offer in comparison to what can other people offer. The thing is, if we can get, because they're going to look at it like this, because obviously, let's be honest, the Cronkies look at this as a business. Now they're going to look at, okay, we've made an initial investment of 72 million, however they made it, whether it's installments, whatever it was. But the point is, the end figure was 72 million plus wages, blah, 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 blah. Now they're going to look at it like, okay, we've got a depreciation asset, which we can get 30 to 40 million for, or we lose or potentially lose out on a lot, or we can get that money, bring in someone for 30, 40 million who offers us what we hoped Pepe could do. Because don't forget, they've not just spent millions and millions of pounds on a new scouting network. Well, not even a network, but just a scouting team and technology to be able to scout properly and use data, use video analytics to be able to really analyze what they're doing, to then just make the same mistakes. Because as much as I hate to say it again, they're not making that many similar mistakes anymore. Like, they knew Willian didn't work out. What did they do? Got rid. And this is the thing. What we've asked for is them to be ruthless and to time these signings, like these outgoings, right. This is the perfect time. Like George said, it's the same as the Lacazette situation. This is the perfect. Because
I don't understand that. I really don't. Like, I hate to cut you off, but I don't really understand somebody that you bought for 72 million, which you have, and that's really the crux of it, is that his price tag doesn't matter, but it actually does. Like, when you have an asset, you have to look at how you can try to recoup something from it. For me to actually sit here and say, well, it's okay for him to kind of be there. He doesn't score a lot of goals. He's not really somebody that we can rely upon, but it's okay for him to suck up 120 grand a week.
That's what I'm saying. They're going to sell him. Hence why I say they're going to sell him.
But that's what. But I'm saying that there's people in the chat that are saying, just
oh,
let him
okay.
be a squad player, run his deal down. It's fine. He doesn't. I mean, it's okay. He doesn't really add that much to the squad, but we shouldn't try to recoup the money, anything for him, because his price tag doesn't matter, and it didn't matter the moment that he stepped in the Emirates. I'm talking from a business standpoint. What you purchase something for always matters. As a fan, no, it doesn't. And I don't look at him like, when he's playing out there, like, well, you're $72 million Pepe. But in this conversation, it does matter to me, because if you could still get 30 million for him this summer, which will probably be your only opportunity too, because once he gets into the last 2 years of his deal, he's running it down. You mean to tell me that we're just gonna? I mean,
but just we've done this.
Can I just quickly just finish the point I was about to make? Was perception is everything in football, and right now his perception is that he's a good player. In terms of his output's been higher than he's ever been, and he's probably got more hype around him now than he probably did if we sold him last season. Hence why I say timing is key. Like Lacazette going to Roma, for example, when we got him for, what was it, 30 million or something like that, he was going to go. That was because of the perception. He became like he's performing very well, or performing a lot better than he was expected. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Perception is everything.
Okay, so like when we talk about wages, I don't think people realize, but do you guys know that we are getting rid of £345,000 a week, regardless of what we do in this upcoming summer transfer window? That's Lacazette, El Neni, and Kolasinac, who all contracts end, regardless of whether we do it early. That is $345K off the wage bill, doing nothing. Okay, now you've got an asset that's on $140K a week that you're telling me is a squad player, and you don't think that we could go and reinvest, even if it was £25 million or £30 million, and put a Noah Lang, who I'm not a huge fan of. Like, I like him, but I would prefer Sulemana from Rennes. Personally, that's my choice. But you get somebody, an unknown, in the mold of a Lakanga, okay, on modest wages to perform a squad role. Is that not a better use of funds? Take the idea out of it. Now, lastly, you have to ask yourself, is Pepe on his wages, because they demand a first team spot? Is he going to do that? With Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe in the team, and who people I think mostly can agree are going to be our starting 11 additions for time. Okay, like, it's not like these boys are going to be relegated to the bench. So how do you fit Pepe with ESR and Bukayo Saka? Now, if your answer is, I feel as though that I can get kind of 25 league goals and assists from Pepe with those two players in your starting 11, then great. Keep him as part of the squad, renew. That's when you make that decision. But if you don't think he's important and you don't think he'll contribute to that level, then you have to sell. It's coming down to the Lacazette point, where you basically got an asset that you overpaid for that isn't of the profile that you really want, and so you tried to get something better, and then now you have a chance to sell him at lower value, but you don't do it because you want to keep him on the hope he gets better, on the hope that he turns things around. And we did this in 2019 with Roma and Lacazette, literally to a T. And he's so emblematic of Pepe. He was an asset, by the way, that we did overpay for at the time. I don't know if people remember, but like, we did overpay for Lacazette. And then we replaced him in 6 months with another £50 million striker. that we should have
Yeah.
got in the first place. So we just do a lot of bad decisions, but also just when you do look at these decisions, Raul bought Nicolas Pepe against the wishes of a manager who, again, were against the philosophy of what we wanted to do. So I don't blame Arteta. Like, I don't know why people are saying, like, this is a stupid Arsenal decision, but we did this. This predates Mikel. This was really a fault of that board who were not doing things the right way. Now, look, we've kind of gutted that. We don't really need to go back on old ground. Look, he is unfortunately a consequence of that era, but it's time to move on, in my opinion. It's time to cut the deal short. Let's reinvest in the squad. Let's buy a left winger, somebody that fits the system a lot more, that we can push ESR central or have the option to keep him left wing. I think that's more important for us than having a bench option at left wing. You know, you could achieve that with a bunch of different people. So Lamana, Noah Lang, we mentioned. There's others. Awar, my favorite versatile option. But there are other ways that we could use this money and use it better. That simply is what it is. Even if we
That's
get
how I feel.
even if we get a cheap £25 million sale, Jess, like even if it is that low, you can use that money better.
And we're so used to just letting these types of assets just chill on our bench and do absolutely nothing and give us no value. And I just feel like there's an opportunity to just at least rid ourselves of that wage and also recoup something that could go to something that fits us a little bit better, instead of just saying, well, I mean, he's decent and he's a nice guy and he scores goals sometimes. So it's okay for somebody who's, as you said, George, his wages dictate that he would be a starter, sit on the bench. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And again, this is why at the very beginning, and I know it's always lost on people, because if you like a player, you're supposed to say it from an agenda driven way and say, if I like a player, I'm only going to say nice things about them. I like Nicolas Pepe. I don't blame him for his price tag. I don't wish ill on him. I just don't think he's ever going to fit what we're trying to do. I don't think he's going to be able to outlast Arteta long enough for us to see another manager come in and do so much better with him. And because of that, I just feel like it's not a big deal. And I'm not really like very fussed about players like that. We get, as an Arsenal, as a fan base, we get very attached to players to the point where we can't see beyond the fact that we like them. And that's just not enough to keep somebody around on 140 grand a week that has underperformed for the 3 years that they've been here for their 5-year contract. Like, if we're just really, really honest. So yeah, for sure. But again, if he starts against Crystal Palace, I hope he scores a hat trick. And that's what being a fan is all about, right? Don't wish bad on him or anything like that. But yeah, let me read out some of your guys' comments before we get out of here. If you guys want to drop a couple of questions in, feel free to do that as well. I saw some questions about can we all go around and kind of say why we wanted Emery out if we were Emery out? I blacked out during that time. I wanted him out so freaking bad. I was so blacked out. I'll never forget when we lost to Leicester and I was like, get him out.
Crystal Palace was the thing for me. When you do look back, I felt that we were still well within top 4 races, and that lineup that he put with El Neni at top 4 was ridiculous to me. I felt that there was a much better chance, ironically, in the league of us getting top 4 at that point in time than there was even at the Europa League. For me to throw away that option of you competing was ridiculous. It screamed, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket, where we didn't need to do that. And I think, look, I'm a type of person that I'll be honest, like, I support the manager regardless. And so I wasn't, that was very late. I don't know if people remember, but like, Crystal Palace was well beyond a lot of the fan base who were done with him. That was right before the final, right? And for me, I feel as though he just wasn't the type of manager that would kind of do well at a big club. So I gave him more leeway maybe than most fans did. But I think Crystal Palace was really the time where I was like, you know what? I just feel like you're happy to settle. And I don't want that in a manager. I want you to take charge. So that was the time I was done.
Yeah. Sulz, were you Unai Emery out, or how did you feel about it?
I didn't mind the appointment so much. I thought, okay, you know what, he'll help us get back into sort of top 4 football, get us consistent again. or try and rebuild with a manager who can probably take over from Wenger and keep the club sort of where it is, just steady the ship, and then obviously we can change philosophies. But when he started doing some madness, putting Torreira as a number 10, we literally needed to win a game and we lost all 4 leading into the final. And then the way we lost the final, I was like, this is the first time I wanted a manager out so bad. I was like, fam, firstly, you cocked up top 4 for us. Then you go get your ass handed to you, in a final. Like, this is your bread and butter. This is why you're relevant. And you go get your ass handed to you, and then you go win it again anyway after you got flipping sacked. You go win it. Like, fam, what? Now, that's when I was done. I was like, okay, because he missed out on top 4, then you lost the final. I was like, I'm done. I can't be asked. This guy is stupid.
To be fair, though, Sulz, like the one thing I defend
No, I'm
with
not being
Unai
fair.
Emery,
He was stupid.
Fair, but I think like on a board situation, when you start to look, his talent ID of targets was excellent.
Yeah.
And
of course it was.
And
if he had that team, I think he would have done so much better. You look at that team, he would have done better.
But wouldn't you say that that team that he was asking for came at a time when people were unsure? You give him Thomas Partey, Wilfried Zaha, Maguire. He wanted Nkunku. Like he wasn't back. Upamecano. Like these are players that he did do well. I think Unai Emery's actually best trait was his player ID or his talent ID. I think he did really well in recognizing what the team needed. He was very good at that. But he wasn't good at relating his ideas to the team. And that's where it struggled. It wasn't so much for me that he's a crap manager. I think he's a very good manager, but he's a manager that does lend itself to a mid-table team. He can't be somebody that dominates. He is an underdog kind of person, somebody that he can squeeze a lot out of, but he doesn't do well being authoritarian, taking the front foot. So it's tough for him.
And we had some really big personalities at that time, and I don't want to sit here and act like I thought the job was easy. Yeah. It wasn't. It was a team in transition that had went from Arsene, who I know that some people don't like to hear this, but he had kind of lost it towards the end of his reign and I thought he was letting certain players get away with murder. And then Unai Emery comes in and they completely disrespected him in a way that I feel like you should never disrespect an Arsenal manager. I don't care who it is. It could be Bobo the Clown. You need to respect Bobo the Clown. Like, you know what I mean? And they're so disrespectful to him. But see, here's the thing about it is that I wanted him out.
Can we call it racism, Jess? I'm sorry. Like, can we call it is what it is? Can you name me another manager, I'm sorry, that deserved that kind of respect in terms of his accent? Somebody that came in trying to learn language, okay? And not only do that, but when you want to get the players that you want, we didn't give him the players that he wanted. Even if you felt he wasn't good enough, was Unai Emery backed to the degree that Mikel is, regardless of whether or not you agree with each manager? He wasn't. And look, I'm not saying I liked him over Mikel. I'm not. But like fundamentally, he may have jumped in the river, but his hands were tied behind his back and he was tied to a stone. So it wasn't as though, it was just one-sided, so that, I don't know. And the idea that he was made fun of, for his culture trying, I was really not okay with that. I really wasn't.
For me, I get that. And I was willing to give him, because I did think the same thing. The targets he wanted would have propelled. Like, I mean, we would be. I know people are gonna laugh. Yes, call me deluded if you want, but we'd be in
I think Yo-Yo's term, by the way. Yeah, xenophobia is the term I'm looking for. Maybe not racism, but xenophobia.
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, I know.
Yeah. Like, we would be in a title challenge right now if we had gotten those players in.
I think my thing with Unai Emery was that, like, and my hard and fast rule is always once a manager loses the dressing room, whether I like that dressing room or not, he has to go. And the reason for that is because you can never sack off the team. You can't sack off the team. You can only sack the manager. And so when I saw that they weren't celebrating goals and they looked apprehensive about scoring them, and you could tell that he really lost it, even though I felt like some of the main people in that team were disrespecting him, I knew he had to go. But I never wanted him in the job to begin with, if I'm honest. I just didn't think he had that. He didn't have that we
presence.
needed.
He didn't have the presence. But he wasn't all doom and gloom. I really pushed back on the idea that he's not a good coach. He is a good coach.
He did stupid things. That's all it was.
He did, and he had great talent ID, but he wasn't back.
I think he had a
He got
night
us.
with Harry and George before every game for the last 5 ones.
For me, I honestly think that I don't think he underperformed. I think he performed pretty good with what he had, if I'm honest. For a long time I didn't really rate the team that we had, and I thought 1 point outside of the top 4. And even though I know people are like, well, he bottled it, I put a lot of that blame on the players as well. I was there at that Brighton game where Xhaka ripped the player down in the penalty box. I was there. That's not Unai Emery, that's Granit Xhaka. You know, if they had, I mean, there's enough senior presence and enough experience in that team where I felt like through that 7-game stretch where they kind of just bottled the lead, somebody could have been like, can we just fucking get it together for one game? Because it was really one game that kept us from getting into the top 4. And they went in. I mean, did he really shit the bed against Chelsea, or was it the team? Like, you know, so
well,
I felt
he
like
also didn't have his players to bail him out. Like Unai Emery was everything that, you know, ironically we keep on saying we don't want. Like he didn't have Ramsey and Mkhitaryan available, who were the players that were bailing him out consistently. And of course, Oba didn't perform, some of those players, but let's not act like his system was really fruitful.
That was a very shitty situation.
It was completely overperformance, and so that was the dichotomy between the two, right?
Yeah, I just hated that. Just the whole thing of it, and what really just disappointed me was the club taking so long to sack him, and then once they did sack him, they left Freddie for dead. You could just tell that the club
That's why I was done after Crystal Palace, guys. Like that's why personally I was done, because that was the big moment where he was like, okay, I'm too scared to lose this Europa League. I'm going to put it all in. And that was actually at the time, if people remember, we didn't know about Aaron in terms of his fitness. We were still gambling, and we basically just said, you know what, let's just put El Neni because we don't want to risk fitness. And I was like, you know what, you're now just saying we're going to put all our eggs in one basket, and you're afraid. And I just felt, okay, you know what, for a big team, he's not going to do it.
Chelsea were losing, United were losing, Liverpool were dropping points. Like all the teams above us that got top 4 that season, all were dropping points. And then we decided, do you know what, we'll also drop points, like, let's go. And I was like, oh.
So I do have to ask, do you guys actually care that Ben White didn't watch football when he was growing up? And, you know, like that's whole thing is coming out saying his name is Benjamin White. I mean, if that's his name, that's his name. But like, I see a lot of comments like he never watched Vieira and he didn't watch football. How dare we get this guy? And I'm just thinking to myself, like,
Can I just say a lot of footballers I know personally didn't watch football. Guess what they were doing? Playing football. Because guess what happened? They were training 3 times a week minimum. And then guess when they played their games? On weekends. Oh, what happens on the weekends? Premier League play. Oh, guess what they're doing? Traveling around the country to play tournament football. So when do they watch it? I'm not saying they don't watch it, but they just don't watch it like we do.
No, but Sulz, you know what I think it is? I think fans are kind of... Sorry, but some fans are a little bit delusional and anything to beat kind of people with, where I think, look, we view football as an escape. What people don't realize is this is a profession for many people. And I just find it really hilarious that, you know, Ben White, who by the time, you know, when Vieira left us was 6, I guarantee you none of you guys were watching football seriously when he was 6. And so if
that's why I say I watched the Invincibles as vibes. I was about 4 or 5. I was like, yo, this man is wicked, fam. I didn't know who he was.
Don't act like you knew what you were watching, though.
I didn't know who Henry was when he won the Invincibles. I was just like, this guy is sick, bro. This guy's cold.
Yeah, and I think, look, for me, I will say this, though. It does make me a little bit weird if we're comparing him to maybe the elite of the elite. I think on one hand, these are profession jobs, and, you know, actually disconnecting from social media and any kind of video is actually really good. How many of you guys go home after working? You know, I'm at the office. Like, how many times do I go home and then look at stuff related to my work? Very rare. You know, I don't do that. I go home to disconnect. Yeah, and so I don't do that. But if you don't have a player that loves it,
yeah, it's like why am I going to watch conferences about technology when I'm at home? I'm like, I can't be honest. I've been doing that all day.
I doubt that he never watches tape or, you know, watches himself back for
he does it every day with Arteta. Like, he loves tape.
Like, you know, it's like we're just always reaching for something to be irate about. I can't wait for football to come back so we can start talking. Being irate about that and not about Ben White.
Yeah, but the thing is, you need to understand what professional footballers have to do at a youth level. Like, are you that weird? Like, come on, like, because the thing is, I've played and I know people who played academy football. what used to happen was you'd have like 3 to 4 training sessions a week, and then on the weekend, whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday, or sometimes it was actually both days, you'd have tournament football, or you'd have like sort of league games to play. When are they going to watch football? I'm sorry, your Saturday, Sunday is gone into playing football. You're not going to come home and then go, actually, do you know what? Because it's my profession, let me watch all of the games, not live. I know what the results are, but let me just rewatch them all just because.
I will say, though, in terms of the elite players, most of them do live in terms of like the elite stuff. And so that my only thing is I don't look at it as a critique that a player can't do that. But I do think, for me, I think if you ask him in a couple of years, he's going to change that. And I think it just matters where he is at life too. I think people forget the kid is 23. Like, I don't know about you guys, but you know, back when you were 23, you had just got out of your adult job. You were like, yeah, if I go home, I'm going out, you know, I'm trying to disconnect from my work life. I'm not looking to do that when I'm at home. And you need that mental separation. I think it's actually really healthy.
I think it has been a bit misunderstood as well, because I don't think he's never watched football. I think that's what I think when he said I don't really watch it, people have gone, oh, he never watches it. He doesn't watch. No, he does watch it. It's just now, you know how we watch it and we analyze the game. He probably just didn't watch it to that level. He probably just casually watched football, like, oh yeah, the game's on, let me just watch it. Not actually, I've got other things to do that are more important. Like I've got to go training. Let me watch football instead.
I think people have a really warped idea of what you have to do to play for Arsenal. I think they feel like, okay, well, they're going to sign for Arsenal, so they need to know everything historically about Arsenal. They need to sit down and watch all the DVDs. They need to go to Highbury House and do this and that. They need to take a tour. They need to know every single player that ever fucking wore a shirt. All they have to do is sign the contract and do the media shit.
I'm 22. I understand what he's going through.
But guys, also, I loved how honest he was. How many kids do we see on the time? And I'm sorry to be rude, but how many kids do we see that say that they know Vieira and then say that he's a DM in the same sentence? Like, it just factually, the kid.
Yeah, that's what Saliba did. He's 19 and he was talking about Arsenal, and I was like, "It's okay, baby. I know you didn't really watch it, honey.
Exactly.
It's okay,
and that's okay." But we love that. Like, we as fans, like, we want that because we're like, "Oh, we need them to love the club." And I rated that he was honest. I'll be honest. I rated because it was like, guys, no offense, but like, I was too young to really watch that. And so for me to go back, I would have to go on Football Italia, and in my spare time after training, having done stuff for about a week already, to go and watch kind of old games, that's not something I would know.
Yeah, whilst watching every single game you've played to analyze your own performances. Oh, guess what I'll do in my free time? Watch more football. I think you just get sick of it at that point. I know it sounds bad, but it's the same with like what we do. Like, for example, like, you know, I'm in technology, for example, I do consultancy. I'm not going to go home and then rewatch an Apple launch just because I need to find out what the fuck they were talking about. I'm tired of this. I can't be asked. I'm going to bed. Yeah, he played in the city. Now I'm not even revealing shit that I know about him. I'm gonna stay silent on that.
They want to be alarmed about something, and there wasn't enough going on. I mean, Arsenal players are scoring during the break. Everybody's chill and relaxed, you know, so they needed something to be upset about. But we did the Pepe talk. We talked about it, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. There's about 87 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. The next time you will see some content on this channel will be Monday, immediately following the game, and then Tuesday, and then we'll just keep going from there. So make sure you guys are all subscribed and all of that. Let us know in the comment section what you thought. If you feel differently, please feel free to let us know. That's perfectly fine. Nobody has to agree. That's perfectly fine. And consider sharing this with a friend. Consider becoming a member of the channel. I'll go ahead and put everybody's names up there. If you want to follow Sulz, you can follow him on Twitter at @GoonerSouls. And if you want to follow George, you can follow him at GeorgeV_AFC. I'm at It's Justinho, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.